With a cry of delight, the path wandered down the steep mountain slope through angular stones that bore blind witness to the intense radiation from the sombre sun, whose rays threaded shafts of multicoloured light through the assembly of clouds that was waiting for the colder winds to shape its decisions. Tiny straggles of green plants danced with the bleached straw as they clung to fissures for dear life, or else peered nervously round the corners of the patient crystalline boulders for whom destiny involved a serious confrontation with gravity, whose insidious whispers told stories of immense wars among the rocks as they whirled their dizzy ways in the fizzing void which was the resting place of the young temperamental solar sphere, spitting furious arches of incandescent plasma through the woven magnetic fields. Curling round the decreasing steepness of the mountain shaft, wisps of rain flickered with carefree amusement as they varnished the bleak facades that were the sentinels of the tectonic battleground, where mighty struggles in the conflict between nuclear furnace and the starlit cold, between thin emptiness and tight density, had fortified the land with immense chains of castellated crags screaming stonily through the fluid earth, shaking with cruel rage, or else sitting in mute meditation across the forgotten millennia. As more clouds began to materialize, grey with pregnancy, little sparkles of insects began to invade the stones lining the wriggling path which had begun to slow its descent, and there the spiky spiders, which had been sharpening their knees and feet in anticipation of a slowly dissolving feast, started to move like whips across the surfaces, farmers leading their weary flocks to the slaughterhouse. The air began to curdle as the increasingly impatient clouds slammed shut the doors of the sky and aimed their wrath at the cowering land whose impudence had dared to challenge the free flow of nitrogen energy. At first they were almost casual, the large flattened globes of glassy water that splattered against the rocky reaches through the dirty yellow-green atmosphere, arrogantly shattering the miniature reflections of the world they had carried with them in their descent from the blackening roof, its ragged dragon tails twisting fiercely against the lighted distance of the reinforcements. Before too long, dense veils of remorseless rain began their drifting descent, concealing the land from itself, a saturation of the clarity of vision with the narrow vistas of illness, wet and cold, rasping the silence with its joyless percussion, dancing to the increasingly turbulent gusts that spiraled their howling rage through the obedience of water. A cobweb of light flickered through the steely greyness above, followed by the deep roar of an audience of giants clearing their throats with a brilliant, insanely twisting shaft of burning molecules that hurled its way towards the ground, immediately followed by the broken crackles and rising glissando that sucked its way upwards into the sneering invisibility that was replaced by the burst of an almost unbearably loud explosion, ripping its shockwave through the field of fear. From this triumphant crescendo of raw power, the loud pummeling rain emerged harder than before, its myriad heavy drops bouncing from the hardened surfaces of the trapped path, turning into tiny transparent fairy ballerinas before sinking back into the distorted reflections that rippled underfoot. The performance of meteorological intensity continued until the fury had passed, then rapidly subsided. Today there were no fistfuls of ice flung against the stoical mountain to hammer it into submission, smashing off splinters and flakes of rock, loosened by the cycle of expansion and contraction imposed by the rotation of the polychromatic planet as it wheeled its carousel way along the density gradients. Instead, narrow cascades of water chattered their way downwards, over the brief river of the path that was gathering its strength to continue its way toward the warm and welcoming valley twilight.